Okay, so we're here today with April Williams from Girls Inc. of New York City to talk about leadership and empathy. April, thank you for being here to talk with me and with everyone about these really important topics and the really critical work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate taking the time.
Tell me a little bit about the work that you do and how that's shifting through COVID-19.
Yeah. So I am the Vice President of Programs for Girls Inc. of New York City. Our work is to inspire girls to be strong, smart, and bold. And so we work with girls from elementary through high school directly in their schools. And so, with COVID, it's been a really interesting transition and pivot because typically we work with the girls on a weekly basis to provide them with more of the content around how they can, like just skill building content and being able to build character. And now we're really focusing a lot more on what is happening inside the homes and more of the social emotional components, right? And really working with them to create self-care practices and talking with them about how they manage their stress and anxiety, being in this isolated environment where either they are dealing with parents who are financially struggling or just have a lot of mental health issues themselves. And so how do they show up? How do they be present? How are they still able to have voice but still create space for their selves and their feelings during this time?
And I was really struck by something that you'd said when we were preparing for this conversation around how your staff needs to be able to be present for all of those situations, yet they're also going through a giant upheaval in their own lives. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how you're managing through that?
Yeah. So our staff has been, I think, the core and pivotal part to the work that we've been able to do. And I credit a lot of, I think I guess it's hard to say success in this quarantine time, but the success that we've been able to have with being able to stay connected with our girls, right? But I think one of the things that was really evident from the beginning is that we had to take a step back and understand that these are people that are also dealing with real life themselves. And so it was important for me to make sure that they felt like they had the support so that they could come into these spaces and be present and be able to take on that emotional sometimes in some instances trauma that they may be hearing about the girls' experiences, right? That are also connecting and maybe triggering or resonating with what they're going through in their day to day. And so a lot of the leadership style and the way that I've been working with my team is to really come with that empathy and understanding that first we are people, we're all humans, we're all going through this experience at the same time. It doesn't matter how old you are, it's affecting us in ways. And so it's important to just give them that space. And so we've been able to craft a lot of that space throughout the week. And so we've been able to give our staff like self-care time, right? So it doesn't tie into their personal time or their sick leave, but just take these 3 hours to just do something that you want to do. I don't care what it is, but do something that's really important for you that will help you feel better and be able to show up in these spaces and be present with the girls. And we've created like these wellness lounges that we host weekly with staff, and we do like guided meditation or yoga. We've had someone come in as a guest speaker and talk about how do they deal with grief, right? How can the staff be prepared to deal with the grief and trauma that the girls are experiencing? And how are they processing that? And I think that's been so critical because they feel like I'm not just, like Girls Inc. cares about me as a person, as an individual first. And that it's important for us to pour into our staff because they're giving so much of themselves daily for not a lot of money in many of these cases, right? Because we're a nonprofit. And so they're showing up, they're being present, even with the trauma that they may be experiencing at home. I've had staff that have lost loved ones, lost parents, and yet they are still motivated and passionate to still come back and do the work, regardless of what it is that they're doing. So just making sure that we're making space for them to be seen, to be heard, and to just feel and have that space and know that we're all here to support, I think has been really, really important and definitely will shift the work moving forward.
Yeah. When you're thinking about what happens next, and we're still, New York City, we're still kind of in the thick of it, even though things are thankfully getting a little bit better. What are you thinking about in terms of what comes next for programming priorities, et cetera?
We're thinking a lot about, our wellness lounges have been amazing. And it's really focusing on mind, body, mental health, the importance of that, right? And not just for adults, but for young people. And we do a lot of work on, as I mentioned, character building, and our girls get to have STEM programming and health and wellness and financial literacy, which is great. But they've also been enjoying a lot of the guided meditation and being able to do activities that allow them to practice their breathing and to manage their anxiety. And we're talking about like sixth and seventh graders, right? Who for many of us, like in sixth and seventh grade, I didn't have that type of anxiety, but our girls do. They have a lot of anxiety, and this was happening before Corona. So post, right, and while we're in it, it's huge. And so we know that as they transition back into the school, it's going to be important for us to just ensure that we're creating that space for them and being much more intentional and thoughtful about ensuring that we're incorporating that social emotional piece and really giving them the tools that they need to be able to navigate and manage through these different transitions that are happening in their lives at school and at home. And I think the connectedness, we've really enjoyed the connectedness that I think we've had as an organization. It's allowed for us to be much more present, to get together more frequently, and not in long periods of time. I think that's been great. So our meetings are no longer 2 hours long. We're able to get the same content across in 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And that's been really good. We've been doing some things where, like, our CEO was able to talk to a program specialist who she may have never really been talking to on a day-to-day basis just because we're all so busy and in the work. But in our conversations now for how we're budgeting and strategizing for next year, we're incorporating their voices based on the work and what's been happening on the ground in this time and in this space. And so we're following the lead of our girls and we're following the lead of our staff in order to ensure that when we come out of this, we're in a much stronger position than we were in when we went into this.
When we talk about leadership in a corporate context, we're typically talking about leading people, leading teams, and the type of leadership that your world is very similar and very different. Talk to me a little bit about that connection, where you see that connects and how.
It's interesting, right? Because it is, I find myself, I'm managing people, I'm managing girls, I'm also managing family members, I'm also managing board members, I might be managing school partners. And so I think the difference is I always say that it can't just be about the work, right? There's always other stuff that's happening, and you have to be cognizant of the lives that people have outside of work and how their lives inform the way they show up in the work. And so it's not as easy for us to be as black and white about, well, you're not performing in this way, or I didn't like how this happened, because maybe a project didn't get completed, or maybe something didn't happen because you were dealing with a student who had a really critical situation and needed that immediate attention. And so, yes, it's important for me to get this budget narrative, but it's also really important that you have to have this connection with a girl who might have been going through some traumatic experience at home, right? Who might have been thinking about suicide, who might have been thinking about running away, who might have been thinking about engaging in, unprotected sex or something of that nature that really required you to not have to do this. And so I think that's the world of our work. Whenever I'm having a really difficult conversation, I always have to take a step back and just hear from them about what is at the surface, right? Like, there's something else going on that's affecting why this is happening, or there's something else going on that is making your response be what it is. And so let's figure out what that is. And so I always say, like, I feel like a therapist half the time as I'm leading my teams, because a lot of it is I'm talking through what their issues are. And once they get it out, I can then help them, okay, so let's work through this, right? How can we get from here to here, understanding all of these other things, let's move here. And I think that makes people feel comfortable. That makes people feel like, okay, she understands. And she understands that it's not just about this one task. There's an overall goal, there's an overall mission, and all of these pieces tie into that. And I'm going to get there, but I just might have something else going on right now that's affecting that. And she's willing to put in the work and the time to help me realize what that is, or work through that so that I can show up and be my best self.
Thank you for that. Before we wrap up, I was hoping that you could maybe share with us an impact story. I know you have so many.
Yeah, it's so hard. We have a lot of girls that are, even prior to COVID, were already struggling at home, and so I think this has definitely heightened what's going on. We have recently been doing wellness calls where, yes, our program is amazing, but I think the fact that we're able to have those one-on-one connections and interactions with their parents and them about what is actually going on at home, and then being able to support. Because it's one thing to say like, "Oh, how's it going?" and then not be able to support it anyway. So we've had a family that was, dealing with a parent that had lost their job, single parent household. There's multiple children in the household. One of the children has a learning disability that really limits the mom from being able to actually go out to the supermarket and get groceries and things of that nature. At the same time, mom is also dealing with some mental health issues herself that have really been heightened given the situation that we're in. And so I think what's been great is that she has been forthcoming about what is happening in her home and feeling like I trust this organization enough or I trust this person enough to know that they care about me, they care about my children, and want to see the best for me. And so we've been able to provide her with resources, right? And even if it's just like, oh, here's a number to call about being able to get food delivered to your home so that you don't have to worry about going out. Or here's a number to call, because your landlord has shut off the gas in the apartment, right? Here's what you can do. And here's some resources to be able to get access to the internet and Wi-Fi and get free tablets for your children. That's been, I think, amazing for us to have, and then just following up there and hearing them come back and say, like, thank you so much for providing me with this resource, or as a result, I'm now partnered with this organization who's actually going to be delivering food. We've been able to partner with another organization called 1K Project, which is amazing. And they are, working to support and sponsor families who are in severe need right now and provide them with monetary funding for the next 3 months, which is like huge for so many of our families who have immediately lost income and didn't have any sort of emergency savings. But those are the things that are happening in real time and in real life. And I know we see a lot of things on the news about what's happening, but it makes it so different when right? Like I know these students, I know who this young girl is, I know who this mom is. And so to know that this is what's happening in their household and they're struggling, we want to be able to support and provide some sort of solace, I think, just for those families during that time.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for being here to be a voice for, the other side of what we're not necessarily seeing on the news. It's really important for everyone to hear, and so many similarities and kind of lateral connections that you can make despite circumstances, background, etc. It's helpful to hear. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. So long.